The evacuation shuttle sat on cracked gray soil, its engines humming with impatience. 47 colonists had already boarded. Only one remained outside. Ruth Nakamura stood with her boots planted firmly on Draven 7, arms crossed, watching Administrator Trell walk toward her with obvious frustration in every step. "Miss Nakamura," Trell said, his iridescent blue skin flickering with irritation. The Vossian was tall and thin, built like a walking stick insect. "The shuttle leaves in 10 minutes. You will be on it." "No," Ruth said simply. "I will not." Trell made a sound somewhere between a sigh and a hiss. He pulled out a data tablet and began reading. Draven 7. Classification. Category Omega. Permanently unlivable. Atmosphere breathable but corrosive over long exposure. Soil toxic to 98% of known plant species. Native wildlife includes 6 apex predators, all rated category 5 lethal. He looked up at her. 17 colonization attempts. 17 failures. The Valkyrie lasted 8 months. The Theshan Collective lasted 6. The Grenmar made it 11 days before their entire settlement was destroyed by grinders. "I know the history," Ruth said. "Then you understand why staying is suicide." Ruth turned and pointed toward a small structure near the abandoned colony buildings. It was a greenhouse, crude but functional, made from salvaged materials. Even from this distance, Trell could see green inside it. "Come with me," she said. Trell followed her reluctantly. When they stepped inside the greenhouse, he stopped breathing for a moment. Rows of vegetables grew in neat lines. Tomatoes hung red and ripe from their stems. Leafy greens spread wide and healthy. Beans climbed up makeshift poles. The air smelled like soil and growth and life. "This is impossible," Trell whispered. "It took me 3 years," Ruth said. "The soil here is not truly toxic. It is imbalanced. Too much iron, not enough nitrogen, and a compound that kills most plants on contact. But if you filter it, treat it, and introduce the right bacteria slowly, it changes." She picked a tomato and held it out to him. This grew entirely in Draven 7 soil. Trell did not take the tomato. One greenhouse does not make a colony. "No," Ruth agreed, "but it proves the planet can support life. Given time." "You have no time. The Union has declared this world dead. Resources will not be allocated here. Support will not come. You will be alone on a planet full of creatures that want to kill you." Ruth set the tomato down carefully. "I grew up on a farm in Nebraska. When I was 12, my family lost everything to a corporate buyout. They said our land was worthless. They said nothing would grow there anymore because they had poisoned it with chemicals. My grandmother refused to leave. She stayed for 15 more years, healing that soil handful by handful until the day she died." Ruth met Trell's eyes. The land was not worthless. It just needed someone patient enough to listen to it. Trell stared at her for a long moment. "You are comparing your grandmother's farm to an alien death world. I am comparing giving up to not giving up." A distant howl echoed across the gray landscape. "Grinders. They hunted at dusk." Trell's skin flickered with fear. "Miss Nakamura, I cannot force you onto that shuttle, but I can tell you what will happen. The Union will return in 1 standard year. If you have not proven this world viable by then, you will be forcibly evacuated, and Draven 7 will be permanently quarantined. No one will ever set foot here again." 1 year, Ruth said. "I can work with that." "You are insane." "Probably." Trell turned and walked out of the greenhouse. Ruth followed him back toward the shuttle. The other colonists watched from the windows, their faces a mixture of pity and confusion. "I will note in my report that you refused evacuation against official advice," Trell said. "When you die, it will not be the Union's responsibility." "Fair enough." He paused at the shuttle ramp and looked back at her. For a moment, something like respect flickered across his alien features. "Why? Why would you choose this?" Ruth looked out at the gray wasteland, the rust-colored mountains, the toxic rivers that carved through dead valleys. Somewhere out there, grinders were gathering for their evening hunt. Razor wings circled in the darkening sky. "Because someone has to be first," she said. "Someone has to prove it can be done. And if not me, then who?" Trell had no answer. He boarded the shuttle. Ruth stood alone as the engines roared to life. Wind and dust swirled around her. The shuttle lifted off, climbing higher and higher until it was just a bright point against the purple sky. And then it was gone. Silence fell over Draven 7. Ruth stood in that silence for a long time. The howls of grinders grew closer. The temperature began to drop as the sun set behind the mountains. She walked back to her greenhouse and stepped inside, closing the door against the cold and the monsters. Tomorrow, she would begin expanding her fields. Tomorrow, she would start mapping grinder territories. Tomorrow, she would take the first real steps toward making this dead world live again. But tonight, she sat among her tomatoes and beans and leafy greens, the only human on an entire planet, and allowed herself one small moment of doubt. Then she reached out and touched the leaves of a tomato plant, feeling the life pulse through it, and the doubt faded. "We have work to do," she whispered. Outside, the monsters howled. Inside, Ruth Nakamura began to plan. 6 months of solitude had taught Ruth many things. She learned that Draven 7 sunrises painted the sky in shades of orange and deep purple. She learned that the northern winds carried seeds from plants she had never seen. She learned that loneliness was a weight you carried until your shoulders grew strong enough to bear it. She also learned that grinders were not as mindless as the reports claimed. The creature lay trapped beneath the collapsed section of an old colony storage building, about 200 meters from Ruth's compound. She had heard the crash during the night, but waited until dawn to investigate. Safety first, always. Now she crouched behind a rusted transport vehicle, watching. The grinder was young, maybe half the size of the adult she had seen from a distance. 6 powerful legs thrashed weakly against the rubble. Its rock-crushing jaws snapped at nothing. The beast was covered in thick gray hide, studded with natural armor plates that could deflect most weapons. That IT was also clearly starving. That Ruth's first instinct was to run. Every report, every warning, every piece of official Union documentation told her that grinders were killing machines. They hunted in packs. They could crush steel with their jaws. They had wiped out entire settlements. But this one was alone. Young. Hurt. She watched it for 3 days. On the first day, she simply observed from a safe distance. The creature grew weaker. Its struggles became less frequent. Other grinders did not come looking for it. Abandoned, Ruth realized. Or orphaned. On the second day, she brought water. She placed the container 50 meters from the trapped beast and retreated. Hours later, she watched through binoculars as the grinder stretched its long neck and drank desperately. On the third day, she brought food. Scraps from her garden, vegetables that had grown slightly wrong, not fit for her own table. She placed them closer this time, only 30 meters away. The grinder ate everything. Ruth began a routine. Every morning, water and food. Every evening, observation. She noted how the creature moved, how it breathed, how its eyes tracked her when she approached. Those eyes were not mindless. They were watchful, calculating, intelligent. On the 12th day, she finally approached the rubble. The grinder went still as she came near. Its massive jaws could have taken her arm off in one bite. Its armored tail could have broken her spine, but it did not move. Ruth examined the debris. One of the creature's legs was pinned beneath a support beam. Not broken, but trapped. This is going to be stupid, she muttered to herself. She found a long metal rod and began working it under the beam as a lever. The grinder watched her every movement. Its breath was hot against her back. IT took an hour of careful work. When the beam finally shifted enough, the creature pulled its leg free and scrambled backward. Ruth fell to the ground, heart pounding, certain she was about to die. The grinder stood over her. Its massive head lowered until one dinner plate sized I was inches from her face. Then it turned and walked away. Ruth lay in the dirt, laughing with relief and terror and something that felt strangely like joy. She named him Boulder. He did not go far. Over the following weeks, Boulder lingered at the edges of her compound. He did not enter, but he did not leave either. When other grinders approached from the distant territories, Boulder would rise to his full height and produce a sound like thunder and grinding stones. The other grinders retreated. Ruth began collecting Boulder's waste. It was disgusting work, but she had a theory. When she processed the material and mixed it with her treated soil, the results were extraordinary. Plants grew twice as fast. The toxic compounds in the native dirt broke down almost completely. She expanded her fields. What had been one small greenhouse became 3, then 5, then a full acre of open farmland, protected by natural windbreaks she built from local stone. Her communication device buzzed one evening. Ruth nearly dropped her water bucket in surprise. She had not heard from anyone in months. The face that appeared on the screen was familiar. Kira Okonkwo, a xenobiologist she had met during colonist orientation. Dark skin, bright eyes, hair pulled back in practical braids. Ruth, you are alive. Last time I checked. Kira leaned closer to her own screen, eyes wide. I am at Union Science Station 12. I heard rumors that someone stayed on Draven 7. I did not believe them. What are you doing there? Farming, Ruth said. Farming? On a category Omega world. Also making friends with apex predators, apparently. She turned the screen to show Boulder, who was currently lying at the edge of her property like a very large, very armored dog. Kira was silent for a long moment. Then she whispered, that is a grinder. His name is Boulder. He likes turnips. Ruth, this is impossible. The behavioral studies say grinders cannot be domesticated. They are territorial pack hunters driven purely by instinct. Ruth looked at Boulder, who had rolled onto his side in the evening sun, 6 legs twitching contentedly. Maybe the studies were wrong, she said. Maybe everyone who came here before was so busy fighting that they never tried listening. Kira stared at her through the screen. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. Tell me everything, she said. I want to know all of it. Ruth sat down in her garden, surrounded by impossible vegetables, with a tamed monster snoring nearby, and began to talk. Outside her compound, razor wings circled in the darkening sky. Ruth watched them thoughtfully. She had plans for them too. The carrots came out of the ground, orange and perfect. Ruth held one up to the light, turning it slowly, examining every detail. No earth supplements. No imported nutrients. No artificial growing solutions. Just Draven 7 soil, Draven 7 water, and 3 years of patient work. She bit into it. The taste was earthy and sweet, with a slight mineral edge that was not unpleasant. Different from earth carrots, but undeniably good. She had done it 0.9 months alone on a dead world, and she had finally proven that life could thrive here. Not just survive, thrive. Ruth sat down in the middle of her field and cried. She was not sure if the tears were from joy or exhaustion or simple relief. Probably all three. Boulder wandered over and nudged her with his massive head, concerned by the strange sound she was making. She laughed through her tears and scratched the rough hide behind his ear. We did it, boy, she said. We actually did it. The celebration was short. There's always more work. Ruth had expanded her territory significantly over the past months. Boulder's presence kept other grinders at a respectful distance. She had mapped safe corridors through their hunting grounds, learned their patrol patterns, identified the boundaries they respected. As long as she did not cross those lines, they left her alone. But the razor wings were a different problem. The flying predators had been circling her field for weeks. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, with wingspans of 3 meters and feathers that gleamed like polished blades. Their hunting cries echoed across the valley every evening. One morning, a pack of 7 descended on her outer field. Ruth grabbed her emergency kit and ran outside, expecting carnage. Instead, she found the razor wings hopping through her rows of vegetables, completely ignoring the plants. They were hunting something else, insects. Specifically, the thumb-sized beetles that had been eating her bean leaves. Ruth watched in amazement as the razor wings systematically cleared her field of pests. They worked with precision, communicating in clicks and whistles, dividing the area into sections. Within an hour, every beetle was gone. Then the razor wings flew away. Ruth stood alone in her pest-free field, mind racing. The razor wings were not interested in her crops. They were interested in what lived among her crops. She was not competition to them. She was an opportunity. That evening, she left a pile of the largest beetles she could find at the edge of razor wing territory. The next morning, the pile was gone. She repeated the process every day for 2 weeks. Then she started moving the piles closer to her compound. The razor wings followed. By the end of the month, they were landing in her fields freely. They did not attack her. They did not threaten Boulder. They simply patrolled her crops, eating every pest they found, and then departed when the sun went down. Ruth had accidentally created the galaxy's most effective pest control system. Kira's face appeared on her screen that night, filled with barely contained excitement. "You're telling me that you have recruited apex predators as farm helpers. I'm telling you that I stopped thinking of them as predators and started thinking of them as neighbors," Ruth said. "They needed food. I had food. We made a deal. Ruth, this is revolutionary." The behavioral models for razor wings assumed they were purely aggressive. No one has ever documented cooperative behavior with another species. Maybe no one ever offered them a reason to cooperate. Kira was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Someone from the union is coming to check on you. Administrator Trell. He arrives in 3 days." Ruth felt her stomach tighten. The 1-year deadline was not for another 3 months. An early visit meant trouble. Why? I do not know. But Ruth, whatever you have built there, make sure he sees it. Make sure he understands. 3 days later, Administrator Trell's shuttle touched down on Draven 7. He stepped out expecting to find a desperate survivor clinging to life in a hostile wasteland. Instead, he found Ruth standing in the middle of a thriving farm, flanked by a grinder the size of a small vehicle and watched over by circling razor wings. Trell's iridescent skin flickered through several colors Ruth had never seen before. "Miss Nakamura," he finally managed. "This is not what I expected. Would you like some carrots, Administrator? They are local." She gave him the tour. She showed him her expanded greenhouses, her open fields, her irrigation system built from salvage colony equipment. She explained the soil treatment process, the fertilizer derived from Boulder's waste, the symbiotic relationship with the razor wings. Trell listened in silence. His expression was unreadable. "Why are you here early?" Ruth finally asked. Trell hesitated. "There are forces in the Union that want this planet to remain classified as uninhabitable. They have significant financial interests in keeping it that way. They sent me to confirm that you had failed." Ruth felt cold anger rise in her chest. "And what will you tell them?" Trell looked at her fields, at Boulder, at the razor wings circling overhead. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he met her eyes. "I will tell them that I need more time to complete my assessment. I will request that your deadline be extended by 1 year. "Why?" Trell's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Because I have never seen anything like this. And because some things are worth protecting." His shuttle lifted off an hour later. Ruth stood in her field and watched it disappear into the purple sky. Then she turned back to her work. When the razor wings swooped down and landed on a fence post nearby. It tilted its head and made a soft clicking sound. Ruth reached into her pocket and pulled out a beetle. The razor wing took it gently from her palm. "Good bird," she said. The creature clicked again and took flight. Ruth smiled and went back to her harvest. The corporate shuttle was 3 times the size of any vessel Ruth had seen on Draven 7. It descended through the atmosphere like a metal predator, sleek and polished and entirely out of place. Ruth watched it land from the edge of her expanded compound. Boulder stood beside her, his massive body tense. The razor wings had scattered at the ship's approach, their instincts warning them of danger. Smart birds, Ruth thought. The shuttle's ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss. 6 armed guards marched out first, taking positions around the landing site. They wore the black and gold armor of corporate security, and their weapons looked expensive. Then came the man himself. Representative Dalgar was a Valkyrie, a species known for their business acumen and complete lack of ethical boundaries. He was shorter than Ruth expected, with gray-green scales and eyes like polished obsidian. He wore a suit that probably cost more than every piece of equipment Ruth owned combined. "Miss Nakamura," Dalgar said, his voice smooth as oil. "What a pleasure to finally meet the famous human who refuses to die." Representative Dalgar. "I was not expecting visitors. I prefer surprise inspections. They reveal the truth more effectively than scheduled ones." His dark eyes swept across her farm, her greenhouses, the massive grinder standing protectively at her side. Fascinating. The reports did not do justice to your achievements. Thank you. It was not a compliment. Dalgar's pleasant expression did not change. You have created a significant problem for my consortium, Miss Nakamura. Draven 7 contains rare mineral deposits worth approximately 8 trillion credits. We have held exclusive mining rights for 12 years, waiting only for final confirmation of the planet's uninhabitable status. Ruth felt her jaw tighten. And I am in the way. You are an inconvenience, yes. One I intend to remove. He gestured, and one of his guards stepped forward with a datapad. I have here a psychological evaluation, conducted remotely by union-certified specialists. It concludes that you are suffering from isolation-induced psychosis and are no longer capable of making rational decisions about your own safety. That evaluation is a lie. It is official documentation, Miss Nakamura. And official documentation, as I am sure you know, is remarkably flexible when properly motivated. Dalgar smiled. You will be evacuated immediately for your own protection. This world will be classified as permanently uninhabitable, and mining operations will begin within 6 months. Ruth did not move. No, I was not asking. Dalgar nodded to his guards. 2 of them stepped forward, hands on their weapons. Boulder moved. The grinder rose to his full height, all 6 legs planted wide, his armor plates flaring outward. The sound that came from his throat was like an avalanche and a thunderstorm combined. The guards froze. Then the razor wings returned. They came from every direction, dozens of them, landing on roofs, fences, and rooftops, and circling overhead. Their blade-like feathers caught the sunlight, throwing sharp reflections across the compound. Their hunting cries filled the air. Dalgar's guards raised their weapons. Ruth raised her hand. Enough, she said quietly. Boulder went still. The razor wings fell silent, but none of them moved away. Ruth looked at Dalgar. The corporate representative had not shown fear, but his scales had paled noticeably. These creatures are Category 5 lethal, Ruth said calmly. Your weapons might kill some of them, but not all of them, and not before they kill you. You would murder a union representative. I would defend my home from intruders. There is a legal difference. For a long moment, no one moved. The air crackled with tension, then Dalgar laughed. It was a cold, empty sound. Well played, Miss Nakamura. Well played indeed. He gestured, and his guards lowered their weapons. I cannot remove you by force without creating a diplomatic incident. Very clever. I learned from clever people. But you have only delayed the inevitable. In 3 months, you will face the Council of Assessment. I will present evidence that your operation is unsustainable, unreplicable, and built on nothing but human stubbornness. They will rule in my favor, and you will be removed legally. Permanently. Ruth met his cold eyes without flinching. Then I will see you at the council, representative. Dalgar turned and walked back to his shuttle. His guards followed. As the ramp closed, he looked back at her one final time. You cannot win this, human. No one defeats the consortium. The shuttle lifted off and vanished into the sky. Ruth stood in silence, surrounded by her creatures, her heart pounding with anger and fear and determination. Her communication device buzzed. Kira's face appeared on the screen, her expression urgent. Ruth, I heard what happened. One of my contacts in the science division intercepted the transmission. Dalgar is going to bury you at that council hearing. I know. Then you need help. Real help. Evidence, documentation, testimonials. Everything you have built, you need to prove it scientifically, undeniably. Ruth looked at her farm. At Boulder, now settled back into his usual lazy sprawl. At the razor wings returning to their patrol routes. Can you come here? Ruth asked. Kira hesitated. That would mean leaving my position. Abandoning my career with the Union Science Division. Yes, it would. A long pause. Then Kira smiled. I always hated that job anyway. I will be there in 2 weeks. The screen went dark. Ruth turned back to her fields. 3 months to prepare for the fight of her life. 3 months to prove that this world could be saved. She picked up her tools and went back to work. They want to fight, she said to Boulder. Let's give them a farm. The grinder rumbled in agreement. 47 species filled the council chamber. Ruth had never seen so many different forms of intelligent life in one place. There were beings made of crystal, beings that floated on magnetic fields, beings with more eyes than she could count. The chamber itself, with a massive dome of white stone, designed to accommodate every possible biological need. Ruth stood alone on the central platform, feeling very small and very human. Representative Dalgar stood on the opposite platform, flanked by a team of corporate lawyers and scientific consultants. His dark eyes glittered with confidence. The council speaker, an ancient being whose species Ruth did not recognize, activated the chamber's translation system and began the proceedings. This hearing will determine the final classification of planetary body Draven 7. Representative Dalgar of the Valkyrie Consortium holds current development rights. Human colonist Ruth Nakamura claims viable habitation status. Both parties will present evidence. The council will decide. Dalgar spoke first. His presentation was polished and professional. Holographic displays showed graphs and statistics. Expert witnesses testified about the extreme lethality of Draven 7's ecosystem. Economic models demonstrated the value of the mining operation. Everything pointed to one conclusion. The planet was uninhabitable, and one stubborn human did not change that reality. Miss Nakamura's survival is an anomaly, Dalgar concluded. A statistical outlier produced by luck and human stubbornness. Her methods cannot be replicated. Her results cannot be scaled. Draven, 7 is dead, and it should be used for the benefit of the galactic economy. The council murmured in agreement. Ruth saw heads nodding throughout the chamber. Then it was her turn. Ruth had no holographic displays, no expert weaknesses, no economic models. She had only herself and the truth. Every species that tried to colonize Draven, 7 failed, she began. 17 attempts, 17 evacuations. The reports all say the same thing. The planet is hostile, the wildlife is deadly, survival is impossible. She paused and looked around the chamber. But those reports are wrong. Not about the facts, but about the conclusion. Draven, 7 is not hostile. It is defensive. Confused murmurs rippled through the audience. Every colony that came before tried to conquer the planet. They cleared land by force. They hunted wildlife for safety. They poisoned soil they did not understand. They treated Draven, 7 as an enemy, and the planet responded in kind. Ruth stepped forward. I chose a different approach. I listened. I observed. I adapted. Instead of fighting the grinders, I earned the trust of one. Instead of killing the razor wings, I offered them partnership. Instead of forcing earth plants into toxic soil, I learned to heal that soil first. She held up a small container. Inside was dark, rich earth. This is Draven, 7 soil. 3 years ago, it would have killed any plant I put in it. Today, it grows vegetables more nutritious than anything produced on Earth. The process is simple. It can be taught. It can be replicated. Dalgar stood. This is one sample from one location. It proves nothing. Then let me prove more. Ruth turned to the council speaker. I request permission to invite the council to see Draven, 7 for themselves. Send an observation team. Let them walk my fields. Let them meet my partners. Let them taste food grown in dead soil. The chamber erupted in noise. Dalgar's face twisted with anger. This is highly irregular. The council does not make field visits based on the claims of a single human. Ruth did not back down. The council makes decisions that affect entire worlds. Should those decisions not be based on direct observation? A new voice cut through the chaos. Administrator Trell rose from his seat in the observation gallery. I support the human's request. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. Dalgar looked like he had been struck. I have visited Draven, 7 twice, Trell continued. What Miss Nakamura has built defies every prediction, every model, every assumption we held about that world. It deserves proper examination. I formally second the motion for an observation team. The council speaker considered for a long moment. Then it spoke. The motion is accepted. An observation team of 5 representatives will be dispatched to Draven 7. Their report will determine final classification. This hearing is postponed pending their findings. Ruth let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. As the chamber began to empty, Dalgar approached her. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with cold fury. You have bought yourself time, he said quietly. Nothing more. When the observation team sees the truth, when they understand that your little farm is built on nothing but human delusion, this will end, and you will lose everything. Ruth met his gaze. Then I have nothing to fear, do I? Since you are so confident. Dalgar turned and walked away without another word. Trell appeared at Ruth's side. That was well done, he said. Thank you for supporting me. Trell's skin flickered with an emotion Ruth could not quite read. I'm not doing this for you, Miss Nakamura. I am doing it because the truth matters, and because I have learned that humans have a remarkable ability to be right when everyone else is certain they are wrong. He nodded once and departed. Ruth stood alone in the empty chamber, surrounded by the echoes of a battle half 1.3 weeks until the observation team arrived. 3 weeks to prepare, the most important presentation of her life. She had work to do. The observation shuttle descended through clouds of rust and purple. 5 representatives from 5 species pressed their faces to the viewing ports, expecting to see a wasteland. They saw a village. Ruth stood at the landing zone with Kira beside her. Behind them stretched fields of green and gold, vegetables and grains growing in neat rows. Irrigation channels sparkled with treated water. Greenhouses lined the eastern ridge. And everywhere, there was life. Boulder raised his massive head as the shuttle touched down. 3 young grinders, offspring from a local pack that had gradually accepted Ruth's presence, lounged near the compound fence. Overhead, razor wings circled in their eternal patrol. The shuttle ramp lowered. The representatives stepped out cautiously. The team leader was a Theshan named Coordinator Van, tall and willowy with silver skin. Behind her came representatives from 4 other species, including one very uncomfortable-looking Valkyrie, sent by Dalgar's consortium to ensure fair documentation. Miss Nakamura, Coordinator Van said carefully, her eyes fixed on Boulder. That creature is a grinder. His name is Boulder. He does not bite unless provoked. Ruth smiled. Welcome to Draven 7. The tour lasted 7 days. Ruth showed them everything. She walked them through her fields, explaining the soil treatment process that Kira had now documented scientifically. She demonstrated the symbiotic relationship with the razor wings, feeding them by hand while the representatives watched in disbelief. She introduced them to the thornbacks, armored herbivores she had recently integrated, whose poisonous spines made perfect natural fencing when properly harvested on the 3rd day. She served them dinner. The representatives sat around a rough wooden table, staring at plates full of vegetables grown entirely in Draven 7 soil. Coordinator Vin picked up a carrot and examined it like a scientist studying an alien artifact. "This is safe to eat?" she asked. "I have been eating them for over a year." "So has Kira." Ruth took a bite of her own meal. "But you do not have to trust me. Trust your own equipment." The Valkyrie representative had brought a portable analyzer. He scanned every dish on the table. The readings came back clean. More than clean. The nutritional content exceeded standard agricultural benchmarks. Coordinator Vin took a bite. Her silver eyes widened. "This is remarkable," she whispered on the 5th day. 2 more humans arrived. Their shuttle touched down at midday, carrying colonists who had heard Ruth's story through unofficial channels. Brent and Maria Delgado, a married couple from New Shanghai, had been farmers before the colony program recruited them for a failed settlement 3 systems away. When they heard about Ruth's success, they requested immediate transfer. "We want to learn," Brent said, shaking Ruth's hand. "We want to help." "Then welcome home," Ruth replied. The representatives watched as Ruth began teaching the Delgados her methods. Within 2 days, they were working the fields alongside her, asking questions, taking notes, already planning their own section of the growing settlement. But on the 7th day, Coordinator Vin called the team together for their final assessment. "I have been conducting planetary surveys for 40 years, she said. "I have never seen anything like this. A single human, working alone, has transformed a Category Omega Death world into viable agricultural land in less than 2 years. She has established cooperative relationships with apex predators. She has developed replicable techniques that can be taught to others." She turned to Ruth. "Miss Nakamura, my report will recommend immediate reclassification of Draven 7 from Category Omega to Category Viable. Furthermore, I will recommend that your methods be studied and distributed throughout the Union as a model for human-style colonization." Ruth felt tears prick at her eyes. "Thank you. The thanks belong to you." Coordinator Vin offered something that might have been a smile. "You have proven something important today. Not just about this planet, but about your species. Humans do not conquer worlds. You befriend them." The Valkyrie representative said nothing. His report would go directly to Dalgar, but it would not matter. The evidence was overwhelming. The observation team departed the next morning. 2 weeks later, the official announcement came through. Draven 7 was reclassified. The Valkyrie mining rights were revoked. Ruth Nakamura was named the planet's first warden, with authority over all future development. The consortium's legal challenges were dismissed before they even reached a hearing. Dalgar never contacted her again. Over the following months, more colonists arrived. Scientists came to study her methods. Farmers came to learn. Representatives from a dozen species requested permission to establish cooperative research stations. Ruth welcomed them all. 1 year after her original deadline, Ruth stood on the porch of the house she had built with her own hands. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Boulders slept at her feet, snoring gently. Razor wings circled overhead, their cries echoing across the valley. In the distance, she could see the lights of new settlements beginning to flicker on. Kira walked up beside her, holding 2 cups of tea. She handed one to Ruth. "You know," Kira said, "when I first heard about you, I thought you were insane. I probably was. Maybe a little insanity is what it takes." Kira looked out at the thriving world before them. "You changed everything, Ruth. Not just this planet. The whole Union is talking about the human method. The idea that maybe we have been approaching colonization wrong all along." Ruth sipped her tea. It was made from herbs she had grown herself, in soil that everyone said was poisoned. A new shuttle appeared in the evening sky, descending toward the main landing zone. More colonists. More believers. More people who wanted to build something instead of destroy it. "I did not change anything," Ruth said quietly. "I just refused to give up. Kira Smythe. That is the most human thing I have ever heard." Boulder stirred, raising his head to watch the incoming shuttle. His massive tail thumped against the porch. Ruth reached down and scratched behind his ear. "Welcome home," she whispered to the approaching ship, to the world around her, to herself. The monsters purred, the farm grew, and on a planet that everyone said was unlivable, humanity put down roots.